Just one race remains in the regular season of Season 2 of NASMARB, and we're about to set the stage for the main event. Welcome to the qualifying session for the MSWP 500. Hello again, friends. Ricochet, glad to have you back for one final time in the regular season of Season 2. A lot still to be determined as you look at the qualifying order coming across your screen right now. It is about to get wild here as we welcome you back for the final qualifying event of the regular season. Almost every driver is either in the playoffs or still has a chance to get in the playoffs by points. There are just two drivers, Mozilla and Prime, that are in must-win territory. Otherwise, everybody else has a chance, and that includes the first qualifier today. On the screen, you see the number 43 of Woodpecker for Dave's Motors. Woodpecker currently the first car out of the playoffs, 10 points below the cut line. And so here at Mayhem Super Speedway, they hope no mayhem ensues for Woodpecker, who has had pretty good numbers here at this track. This season, though, has been a struggle. Woodpecker has failed to qualify twice. In this particular race last season, they finished 10th. And here's the first lap of the final qualifying session. Turning around backwards is the 43. Coming across the line a little slow, it seems. We'll see once it kind of shakes out what that lap looks like. It's a 4:32 time for the 43, who first has to qualify for the event to have a chance, of course. As the 25 of Spitzer is up next. And Spitzer, right on the heels of Woodpecker. Woodpecker comes in 10 points below the cut line. Spitzer just 1 point back of that. Numbers are not great this season, and they're not great here at Mayhem Super Speedway. So the 25 hoping that that momentum changes, and they'll have a chance to maybe make something happen here. A last-ditch effort. 11 points below the cut line coming in. Here's the 25. Big spin going into turn 2. And looks like the speed picked up there on the final stretches of 397. And a pretty solid time there, it seems. Speed was definitely there, although a little wild here. But Spitzer runs the first sub-4 second lap. And now the 66 of Mozilla. And Mozilla, of course, is in a spot where they must win this race in order to get into the playoffs. Mathematically eliminated by points at least. And you can see on the right side where you look at the season stats, that gives you a pretty good reason as to why it might be like that. It's been a rough season for the 66, changing teams over to Coos Motorsports. Same car number, but a different team, and not a lot of success so far for this team, particularly for Mozilla. But this looks like a pretty solid lap there, very strong, and a very good lap. A 3:53 is the time. As you have a look at the replay there, pretty darn good right there. And Mozilla set up in a pretty good spot early on as we move to the number 17. Crimson Cruisers Racing. And the final chance for Prime to, just like we just said with Mozilla, qualify for this event and have a chance to win their way into the playoffs. Mozilla and Prime going back-to-back here in the qualifying session are the two cars mathematically eliminated by points to be able to get into the playoffs. They must win. So at least one of them isn't going to make the playoffs. Most likely neither, but both so far off to a pretty good start. They just ran the exact same time. A 3:53 for Prime. And the two cars that are in must-win situations have the fastest lap so far, the first four cars to go. Here's the number 1 of Sal. And Sal is the next car after those two. 27 points below the cut line right now for the number 1. It's been a disappointing season for Sal, who has solid numbers here. 7 heat wins here. That equals the total from this season so far for Sal. 1 finals appearance and 3 fastest laps run here at Mayhem Super Speedway. Here we go from Sal. It looked a little wild there. And coming out of turn 3, got a little sideways, slowed it down, but still a 3.7. A respectable time for the number 1. As Sal tries to do the unthinkable and make it into the playoffs. Now here is the driver that is the cut line. It's the 93 of Electro, who failed to qualify for this race last season. So you know that's certainly not what the OB Racing team wanted to see happen, where Electro is right on the cut line. Last car in the playoffs right now, 10 points above Woodpecker. Numbers are not very good overall. They're middle of the pack for Electro here at this track, as well as, for that matter, what they've done so far this season. It's been a disappointing year for the 93, who runs a pretty clean lap here, and it's the fastest lap of the day, a 3:44. Very solid right there. And now here's the number 9 of Quillo. Quillo is a little bit more comfortable than we saw Electro. 27 points above the cut line right now for the number 9. 18 heat wins this season. Also, a couple of times that they haven't qualified for a race. They've also failed to qualify at this racetrack one time. However, in this race, they finished 17th last season. So, looking to improve upon that is the number 9 of Quillo. And a solid lap there, not too fast, a 3:56, not the fastest lap, but right there in the middle of the pack right now. 4th out of the 7 to run, but still a very solid time for the number 9. Here is the 26 of Streamer, one of the best drivers to ever do it. However, Streamer has had a tough season this year. It has not been automatic for the 26. They come in 37 points above the cut line as you look at the track numbers as well as the season numbers. A win here at this track, but only an average finish of 9th this season with just 14 heat wins. A little low for the 26. Streamer, as we said, 37 points above the cut line. If they qualify for this event, they make it through the qualifying round and get into the event tomorrow, then they will qualify for the playoffs. However, that was the slowest lap we've seen. The 26 gets into big trouble here in between turns 2 and 3, really getting into 3 there is where the problem came, and it is the slowest lap, a 4:42 for Streamer. Going to set up a very interesting second lap here. As Confetti will step up. Streamer right now is running 9th in the points, by the way. The top 8 drivers in the standings are all locked in. We'll get to them a little bit later on in the qualifying. Here is Confetti, who is right now 16th in the points, 16 points below the cut line. So a lot of work to do for both of the Fortune Racing cars, Sal and their teammate Confetti, as Confetti gets sideways exiting turn 3 and runs a 387. So now the Fortune Racing drivers running 5th and 6th out of the 9 cars to run so far their first qualifying lap. All you got to do is get in. That's the goal of all of these drivers that are not Mozilla and Prime. Their goals are just to get into the event, to give themselves a chance. Here's the 99 of Nugget. They're in the exact same spot, running 17th in the points. They are 23 points below the playoff cut line. Average finish at this track of 9th place. Average finish on the season of 13th, and they failed to qualify in a couple of races this year for Coos Motorsports. It's been a rough go for that brand new team as the 99 tries to pick up speed down the backstretch. And they will. Good enough for 6th fastest. A 377 is the time from the inside line for Nugget in the 99. As we get to our first of the cars that is locked in, and it's the points leader, Lemon Drizel, in the number 3. Red Pandas Racing with Dave's Motors on the hood. Couple of wins this season. 37 heat wins this year. 4 fastest laps. An average finish of better than 6th. Will almost certainly be the regular season champion, but he gets into trouble here out of turn 1. Spins around backwards. Picks up the speed, though, and it's a 377. A pretty good salvage lap there from Lemon Drizel. That is 7th fastest, just in between Nugget and Confetti. So certainly not the lap they were looking for, but still not a terrible lap. An average one with a pretty good comeback there on the second half of that lap after a rough start. As we move to the 48 of Oak. Also locked into the playoffs is Oak, 156 points on the year. That is good enough for 7th in the standings at the moment. That could change based on what we see from the remainder of this race, but they are in the playoffs no matter what, the defending champion of this sport. As the 48 releases and runs a pretty solid lap here. That's a good lap. Very smooth, and it's the fastest lap of the day by 1/100th of a second. Just able to beat out Electro, a 343, and did it with extremely smooth handling there of the 48 car. Very well done. Winks in the 13 will stand in. Winks currently sitting 15th in the points, 14 points below the cut line. And so, again, going to have to make up some points here Electro running the second fastest time so far. Not a great look for these cars that are trying to catch up to that number 93, as Winx runs a solid time. That's a 3.54. Good enough for 5th as of the moment, as we had 13 cars run. By the way, Streamer, we said all they had to do was qualify for the event in order to make the playoffs. They currently run last out of the 13 cars to run. And now here's the 53 of Piper. She is in the playoffs as well. Red Pandas Racing occupies the top 3 spots in the point standings and includes Piper, who runs 3rd right now. 1 career finals appearance, 23 heat wins. She finished 4th when we visited Mayhem Superspeedway earlier in the year, and she'll try to improve upon that as she lets go from the inside line here, and it looks like a pretty solid run. Another good one. 3rd fastest for Piper, a 3.49. And she settles into a pretty high spot here. As we move forward to Neptune, who's in the playoffs, currently tied for 5th in the standings along with Steve. Neptune in the number 11 with 2 wins this season. It's been an up and down season for sure. Neptune won the first race of the season and then really struggled after that. Neptune has picked it up here. This is not a great lap. Turned around there, and it's a 3.7. Good enough still for 9th. Not a terrible lap, but not a great one. Got a really harsh attempt trying to get out of the turn there, out of turn 3. Here is Steve in the 32. Steve's in the playoffs as well. Tied with Neptune. We just mentioned it. 158 points on the regular season for both of those drivers, tied for 5th and 6th, respectively. And there are the numbers for Steve. 20 heat wins, a shocking 7 fastest laps, and a qualifying spot of averaging better than 5th place, which is crazy considering a DNQ. Very impressive. No wins yet, though, for Steve. Looking for career win number 1. Can they do it to close out the regular season? Another really good qualifying run. This is a 3.49, good enough to tie Piper for 3rd fastest. As Steve, yet again, just a really solid, very impressive qualifier. Here's Jack Tato in the 12. Jack Tato is the last car locked into the playoffs right now, running 8th with 148 points. Locked in to the playoffs next week with a win this season and a really 2-week stretch where Jack Tato was the most dominant driver in this sport. Has kind of come a little bit closer back down to earth now, but it's still been a really good year for the 12. And another good lap. That is 3rd fastest, a 3.47 for Jack Tato. I'll tell you what, if you are Unified Racing, you've got to be really, really happy with what you've seen this season from Jack Tato. A huge step forward for the number 12. Here is Earl now, who is 2nd in the point standings. Tied for 2nd, really. Piper and Earl are in a dead tie. 1 win, 3 finals appearances, 32 heat wins, and an average finish of better than 8th place for Earl, who's been really good. The other Red Pandas Racing car, Woodpecker, not so great, but the other 3 have been really good this season. They're the top 3 cars in the standings. Earl, a little back and forth there. Not going to be the best lap you'll see. That is a 3.68. Good enough for 10th right now for Earl. As we move forward to Murakami. Murakami is sitting 11th in the point standings. It's been a pretty meteoric rise for the number 4, who started out the season really, really poorly, but 15 points above the cut line as we come in, including a win here at this racetrack. No wins this season, and you see the numbers not overly impressive, but a very good run as of late for Murakami. Picked up 4 positions in the standings just from last week, trying to hold on and make the playoffs, and Murakami speeding around, hard hit into the wall on the final backstretch will hurt the time a little. It's a 3.53. Good enough for 8th fastest, tied with Prime right there. But a pretty solid time right in the middle of the pack as we go to Bloodstorm. Final car to qualify here is Bloodstorm. And there are the numbers this season. Bloodstorm's been good. 4th in the points right now. The best running driver that is not driving for Red Pandas Racing is Bloodstorm. 167 points. Only a point back of 2nd place. 86 gets a little out of whack there going into turn 1, but it still looks pretty good. It is good. It's the fastest time of the day. A 3:42, and look how close the top 6 are. They're all within 0.07 of a second. As you look at the recap there from the inside line, Bloodstorm runs the fastest, and if you look down toward the bottom, Woodpecker, first car out of the playoffs, right now not in line to qualify for this event. Streamer, all they have to do is qualify in order to get into the playoffs, and they ran the slowest lap. Spitzer, 2nd below the cut line, running the 18th lap. As you see the current points running there on the bottom right of your screen, Woodpecker runs a 3:56. That's a really good lap there to make up quite a bit of time. A 3:94 is the average time. Woodpecker makes up time and puts themselves in a spot where they have a chance. Now here's Spitzer. Things are about to get wild here, folks, as Spitzer bouncing off the walls on the final backstretch. A 3:86, just enough to hold on to the spot. That is a 3:92. Spitzer runs to the top of the board for the moment. Now here's the 66 of Mozilla trying to spoil the party. And they will. A 3:52 average time. Wild out of the gate was the 66, but they are locked into the show. And will have a chance to do the unthinkable. Now here's the 17 of Prime. Prime a little slow out of the gates here, hitting the wall down the backstretch. But still good enough. A 3:59. Average it to a 3:56, 2nd fastest so far for the 17, and they will have a chance to play spoiler in the main event. As Sal now comes up to the plate, and Sal puts up a solid time. 3:58 is the average. As Spitzer and Woodpecker, the 2 cars closest to that cutoff line that are below the 2 slowest cars so far. Here is the cutoff driver. It's the 93 Electro, who runs a pretty good time there. Electro ran a really good first time. That's an even better time. Average it to a 3:4, and to the top of the board goes the 93. Making a statement is Electro. Here's Quillo trying to follow that up. Quillo is pretty comfortable above the cut line, but you never know. Average it to a 3:55. Into 3rd place. We've run 7 drivers, and it's still Spitzer and Woodpecker at the bottom of the track. Here's the 26. This is a big one for Streamer. Streamer's got to qualify for this event to guarantee themselves a spot in the playoffs, and not quite enough. A 3:43 is the time. It averages to a 3:93, 1/100th. Slower than Spitzer, who is now in the main event. And a big spin for Confetti. Comes across backwards. It doesn't matter. It's still a 3:80 to average a 3:84. And that is huge because that was the closest driver to the cut line remaining. Now the 99 of Nugget, who's going to have to make a big mistake. Not a very good lap, but it's still well good enough. 3:68 is the time. And things are getting dangerous here for the 43 and the 26. Oh my goodness. Halfway through, the 26, 9th in the points, but not locked in danger of failing to qualify. The 43 is the closest driver to the cut line that is below that point standings right now, and they are in line not to qualify. Meanwhile, on the other side, Electro making a statement. They're on the cut line, and they've run the fastest average time so far. Here's Lemon Drizel, who gets a little wild there. Drizel has not had a very good time qualifying as of late. As you look at a wild run once again from Lemon Drizel, average it to a 3:81, that's 7th fastest. Now here is Oak. Oak tries to keep it going. Pretty good speed there for the 48. It's good, a 3:52 average time. Things are getting wild here. As we get closer and closer, Winks could be the closest to the cut line that actually makes the event. They run a 3:53 average time, good enough for 4th. As we get lower and lower, and the numbers are just not there. You're going to have a big mistake from a driver if Woodpecker and Streamer want to make it into this event. Here is Piper now, and she spins going into turn 2. That might be the one they needed. Is it enough? The answer is no. Even with the slow lap there from Piper, her average time is still a 3:82. That is 10th out of the 14 to run. Now here is Neptune, who ran a 3:70. You can maybe get that out of Neptune, which they're just not going to. That's a great lap from the 11. Really fast there, a 3:28. That's a good lap. Fastest lap we've seen from either lane so far, and good enough to move Neptune into second right now. Now here's Steve. Ran a 3:49 from the inside line. Another fast lap. These drivers at the end are really picking it up. 3:42, an average 3:46. To second goes the 32. Now Jack Tato. This is another good lap. They're just running solid laps right here. That's a 3:29. Second fastest lap of the day, and to the top of the leaderboard goes the 12, a 3:38 average time, which is faster than what we're going to see from this racetrack last season, as Earl, the track record holder at this track, just ran a 3:41, good enough to settle into the middle of the pack there, a 3:55 average time. Streamer won the pole for this event the last time that we were here in race 4 of this season with a 3:42 average time. We'll obviously beat that. Here's Murakami, a little wild there coming out, and it is going to be good enough. That is going to be a 3:68 average time. It's going to knock Woodpecker out, and Woodpecker is the first car officially eliminated from the playoffs now. Here comes the 86 trying to win the pole. The answer is, will they do it? Or the question is, will they do it? The answer is no. A 3:45 will move them into third. Jack Tato is the pole sitter for the MSWP 500 with a just flurry of fast laps there at the end from those top drivers. It's Jack Tato over Electro, Bloodstorm, Steve, and Neptune. That's the top 5. Then Oak, Mozilla, Winx, Earl, and Quillo. Prime, Sal, Murakami, Nugget, and Lemon Drizel. Piper, Confetti, and Spitzer by 1/100th of a second will make it into the event and have a chance to race their way into the playoffs. That is a huge final 100th of a second. As you look at the drivers failing to qualify, Streamer and Woodpecker. What's interesting about that, this was a much faster qualifying. If you put together those average times of Streamer and Woodpecker, they would have qualified 14th and 15th respectively in the last event that we held here, race 4 of this season. Unfortunately, this track sped up, and it's not enough today. They're the fastest laps. Bonus point for Bloodstorm and Neptune, and 3 bonus points go to Jack Tato, winning the pole position with a 3:38 average time. And there are the groupings for the final race of the regular season. It's Jack Tato, Earl, and Spitzer, Electro, Quillo, and Confetti, Bloodstorm, Winx, and Piper. Keep an eye on that one. Steve, Prime, and Lemon Drizel. Group 5 is Neptune, Sal, and Nugget. And Oak, Mozilla, and Murakami will face off in group number 6. A wild qualifying event. That may have been the most insane qualifying we've seen this season, if not in the entire history of this sport. And it sets up what will be a very interesting and a very intense final race of the season. Tune in tomorrow to see who makes the playoffs for Season 2 of NASMARB. Until then, I'm Rick O'Shea, and you've been watching MSPN.